actually don't know what to title this video, but fun fact, I've had to read several papers on why people connect with certain characters that are fictional, and while I can't say that I've learned anything, enjoy a small essay that I got relating that college paper to Genshin. Taste is subjective. That much is true. If you like a character, that depends on you. The nuances and the specifics are up to you to decide. But $1 billion worth of game sales revenue in a gacha game isn't. And with that, I asked a couple of people on why they think Genshin's characters are so popular. Genshin's character designs are absolutely eye-catching, and coupled with its anime aesthetic, we cannot deny that Hoyo definitely has a way of making characters popular. So popular, in fact, that they're constantly trending on Twitter whenever there's a character release. With how loyal the fanbase is to the characters, Hoyo has to be doing something correctly both aesthetically and narratively. Genshin's gacha relies heavily on how invested players are in the character, whether it be through their stats, or their stories, or their outlooks. So let's see what Genshin's alleged formula is for popular characters. Disclaimer: when I say popular, I don't really mean that their banner sales are high or that they're constantly played, but rather how distinct and recognized they are in the community and the fact that the Genshin characters are so loved lore-wise. This is also just not isolated to Genshin. In fact, I'm just using Genshin as an example. Any good game with good characters uses this kind of formula in one way or another, but Genshin just has more specifics that I'm interested in going into. I'm more interested in the writing aspect of their popularity, and the template Genshin follows to make sure these characters are more or less defined units rather than blank stat fodder. Alright, so too long, don't watch. We've got the usual they're hot, they're pretty, they're strong meta-wise, and their design is really individualized kind of deals, but then there were also 5 important reasons that people gave me when I asked them why they think Genshin's characters are so loved by the community. 1 is distinct characterization through the characters' stories, hangouts, quests, and voice lines. 2 is constant exposure to the characters in the patch updates. 3 is that characters' relationship with other characters. 4 was the blurring of the lines of fantasy versus real world with cultural inspirations. And 5 was the feel-good effect. Alright, that's it, you can click off now. Let's start with the most prevalent. The lengths that Genshin goes through to establish a character is really extensive. Voice lines are constantly updated, and almost every situation that you have in terms of fighting or even just in lore has a voice line of that character. The trailers for both 4 and 5 stars are given with attention and care. Characters get their own theme songs, characters always have a minimum of 5 fleshed out character stories, and some even get story quests and hangouts. Genshin clearly loves to market its characters not only playstyle-wise, but also story-wise. Constant exposure in terms of event quests was something I was actually pretty shocked to hear as a really big factor, but some people told me that this was one of the most important reasons. This also has a really big role in why people have differing opinions on characters they don't always see or that aren't usually featured in the events, or why some people are so adamant on talking about a character despite them not being in a patch at all, thus boosting their popularity. Some people told me they really didn't like Albedo before his event quests, but fell in love with him once 2.3 came out. Same for characters like Kazuha, Fischl, Mona, and a lot of them actually. The reason for this is that Genshin's event system per 5 to 6 weeks allows us to see these characters in a new light or a new situation, and it really fleshes out their characterization by a lot. A character that's happy in one instance can be absolutely serious in an event quest, for example, once the stakes are raised. It recontextualizes a lot of things that we don't usually see in the voice lines and the character stories. But another thing that I want to emphasize is constant. A character doesn't always need to be featured to be loved, or they don't always have to hog the spotlight, like how Amber had a really big gap before she was ever featured in an event quest. So instead we should consider this factor as for the whole collective of the Genshin characters. By constantly exposing the player to these characters' little personality quips, it becomes ingrained. It's kind of like the social psychology of Propinquity. It refers to the physical or psychological proximity between people, thus forming a pseudo-kinship. Given these characters aren't real, it's the rotating exposure they have through the event quests. Now, this isn't the end-all be-all reason because some characters would flop if this was the only thing, but it does play a really big role in people liking certain characters. Speaking of events, another one is the character dynamic with other characters. Surprisingly enough, Character relationships was also a really big factor on why Genshin's characters are so loved. Relationships in character writing is important in showing how characters talk or react to factors outside of their control, like how a timid character like Chongyun would be paired with a prankster like Xingqiu, or how a somewhat closed-off and avoidant character like Xiao develops when paired with an everyone's best friend archetype like Aether. Genshin's relationships built through the character stories and the voice lines make them feel more alive. They feel more connected to the world around them instead of just being a caricature. Plus, how they react with certain people vary, showing us aspects of that character that we're not really used to if they're just talking with the Traveler. For example, is Albedo's more brotherly nature, or Eula's softer side when around Amber. The most recent events of 2.6, 2.7, and 2.8 really got creative with character relationships and showed us a lot of friendships and connections you'd be shocked about. So breaking the boundaries of the characters by making them interact with each other not only make a more impactful story, it also makes the whole cast feel interconnected. And this is actually something that's really difficult to do with such a massive roster, but Genshin manages really well because of how consistently they pump out patches. Now, I can't praise the lengths that Genshin goes through without addressing the character designs. The term that I will use for Genshin's character designs is they're interactive. What do I mean by this? To say that Genshin doesn't take inspiration from real-life cultures is horribly ignorant. Genshin prides itself for creating a world fashioned on real-life cultures, but as fictional as these characters are, strangely enough, this actually plays really well into making their characters more recognized and connected with the audience. By creating places that take, or mishmash, inspirations from our world, the audience's connections with these characters are much stronger because they share elements that we've seen in regular life. It's the same feeling audience members get when they ask for representation in a piece of media. It is a vicarious way of showing that you care about a character. A great example of this is when Genshin makes the real-life events, like the collabs and the real restaurants. Now, is this always a good thing? Absolutely not. As fictional as the world of Genshin Impact is, Hoyo hasn't been the best when it comes to representation, and they are considerably ignorant on the potential effects their cherry-picking of cultures can have on the cultures that they've cherry-picked from. But that further just proves the massive card that Hoyo has in terms of culture and character relationship. The connection that Genshin characters have with the audience because of this level of pseudo-real-life parallels has done wonders in individualizing their characters, making them immediately eye-catching and making the people immediately care. Introducing small details in their clothes that people can relate to in real life, or scrutinizing them based on real-life information. Good or bad, it is still publicity. And last but not the least is a psychological effect that I found fascinating. Genshin's characters are popular and loved because they are idealized versions of human problems. The playable characters make you feel good because almost all of them have positive or unbound outlooks on their ambitions. This one was a really surprising answer that I got because I genuinely wasn't expecting it, but now that I think about it, the people are completely right. Almost all of the character stories are about growth, change, overcoming one's problems, or simply having a positive outlook on a situation despite everything bad that's happening to you. It makes the audience both sympathize and root for these characters because they know who they are and what they stand for. You hardly see a character that's treated like a villain in their story, and even villains get their own sob story or an alternative personality that makes the audience look at them in a different, more sympathetic light. It's a weird technique that Genshin does, but if you read between the lines, you can definitely spot how they do this. But yes, that's all the answers that I've got when I asked people why they think Genshin's characters are so popular. And again, this isn't limited to Genshin. You can apply this with any popular game that uses characters as their main selling point, and you'll probably get the same answers. But yes, that's it for me today. My name is Aster, and thank you for chilling with me. Also, I am almost done with the Sumeru Archon quest. Part 4 is gonna come out tomorrow. Maybe.